Okay, we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the AI Analyst with a question mark. The goal of this series is to find out what is happening in the overlap between data analysis and Gen AI. Is it helping, hindering, taking over, or is it just going to bounce off eventually and we'll go back to what we were doing a few years ago? Don't know. And the goal of this episode is to think about the data storytelling end of that data analytics process. I needed a talented guest with a great reputation, and I'm delighted to say we've got Gabriele Mérite with us today. Gabby is founder of Figures and Figures. She's been around for, you're going to have to correct, I think at least 10 years you've been in the field.
Yeah, I think a decade.
Working. Yeah, a decade. She's done a huge amount of influential and impactful work, and recently founded Figures and Figures, which is it a data narratives and design studio, Gabby? Is that fair?
It's a great question. We call it an information design studio.
Information design. I was researching Gabby's stuff this morning, and I love this. This is sentence one on the website. Evidence has power when people can understand it, trust it, and act on it. We design it so it clicks, sticks, and shifts behavior, which, believe me, I've had to rehearse saying those lines about 5 times because it's easier to say it than read it. But I love that vision, Gabby. So have I captured Figures and Figures correctly? And welcome to the show. Tell me about Figures and Figures.
Perfect job. Thank you for introducing Figures and Figures. Yeah, I mean, we're a young studio, but I've been here for a minute, and I think we are an information design studio that really wants to do 2 things, which is raising the floor of the field as a whole and how people systematize how they approach chart making, and then also raising the ceiling by doing some of the beautiful work that you put on screen with, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, you've done some, I mean, go check out the website for some great case studies. So the aim of today, or the inspiration of today, was a post. Well, it was the outlier talk you did at Data Visualization Society's event last year, at Outlier in Miami. And the post that came, or a big message from that, was, we're not chart makers and never were. And I want to dig into how you think that is going to be influenced by Gen AI and LLMs. And the quote came from that talk. Again, your thesis there was about going from makers to shapers. So can you elaborate on that, but bring in how LLMs and Gen AI is influencing your manifesto as the AI technology evolves?
It's interesting because I made it before. I mean, it was only a year ago, but since then, I think I'm seeing more and more of AI talks, even in my, in our clients. The whole concept of this transformation that I'm trying to promote is for us to move away from makers, people who like text brief, people who optimize visual, people who deliver assets, so the production aspect, and move towards people who helped others see their problem differently. So more of a, strategy advisor, so decision shapers, people who shape question, who reframe narratives, who influence the strategy about how we approach not chart making anymore, but sense making. I think is probably the key word here. And obviously it connects really clearly to AI because I think the question is, if AI makes our chart making skill set irrelevant, then what are we?
Yeah. And so if we're not the chart makers and Gen AI is on our heels, are the LLMs and the AI apps the chart makers now? Is that where we're going, or are you trying to fight against that or work towards it?
That's an interesting question. Am I fighting against it? I think that I am fighting for us to better position ourselves so that the product that I created out of AI and how AI is used in the process of sense making is used properly. I have concerns that, at least when I speak to my client, most of what I hear is like, you can make a chart with AI. I mean, Claude just came out with diagrams and chart, actually. Anthropic just came out with it, and somebody sent me my business coach, Dan Moore, sent me a little Slack message. He was like, "Did you see it? It's so cool! Like, I just got. What do you think?" And it was it was an interesting curve of compounding interest to explain compound interest. So it was a simplified curve with, a classic curve like this, and then you had like a very specific point on the axis, like 50, 40 million, whatever, like a beginning compound interest. We've all seen it. It's like a really nice chart like this, and then a timeline. And I think what was interesting is it looked great, beautiful work, right? Clear, clean. I think by any standard would meet Tufte's requirement. Is it true though? That's a different question. And there was actually some things already on the chart that were incorrect, from the axis to timelines to, in my opinion, it was more of a diagram than a chart.
Yeah.
Because when you think about compounding interest, for instance, it's not a straight line like this. That would be maybe an average or something like that, like something that's very much like simplified. It's a conceptual approach of the data behind compound interest. It's not a compound interest graph. And that made it look like the chart was like a compound interest. If you put your money into the market, this is how it's going to look like, which is a major problem. And there's huge risk attached to that.
So just to show people, I'm just going to, the diagrams you're talking about, let me share my screen. So in Claude, you can now ask for diagrams. I've been asking for wireframes and prototypes most recently with this. And so providing a user story and a goal for a dashboard, just give me some mock-ups and prototypes. And they're pretty good, right? I haven't done this in production. I'm just experimenting at the moment, so I haven't yet validated how good these are in that reality. But certainly on the surface, this seems incredibly powerful. And I think you capture that going into production. That phrase, "Is it true?" is the real challenge with AI, isn't it? Because does it make it more important for the shapers to be experts, or does AI democratize the skills and make them accessible to more people?
I love this question. I have a hot take on us as expert, but that's a different question.
Well, go down either path, right?
Good. Okay, I'll try the first path, and then I'll bring it back to us positioned as expert. I think AI is putting a little bit of pressure to create more charts faster.
Yeah.
And that is long before that's not the point of charts. And I think this is this is also why I want to reposition our field. Our field is not here to do chart making. Our field is here to do sense making. And so there's this pressure of creating more chart faster, but are we really also increasing better reasoning and safer decision along with it? Because I think currently, at least the way it's looking, we're just multiplying error. We're multiplying bad practice. We're multiplying risk. And that could have a very high cost. So is that speed really, is that speed worth it?
Is our one word answer no, or maybe?
I think the answer is no, if you ask me. Some people might disagree. I mean, I think it's a question to ask the leadership of big organization. If you had an LM to me, it's a question I ask. I have a big healthcare client. We've been working with healthcare like right now a lot, and AI here, AI there, right? And I'm like, would you be comfortable making a chart with AI, with no double checking whatsoever, with no framework on how to make a good chart, and then share that to an HCP, a doctor, who will take a decision on what drug to give a client to save them from cancer? Because that's the reality. That's the responsibility. This is the expertise point. I think we have positioned the field as a specialty, like a craft, a specialist craft that only us can do. Chart making. And I think this is where I disagree probably. And this is where I think it's a position that's hurting us. It's not a specialty craft. It's a responsibility. Chart making is a responsibility. And it's not one that we alone carry. It's one that anybody who touches a chart, that's involved in a chart that impacts a final decision, carries. And so the thinking behind it is specialist and expert. Yes. The making, not so much. Many people even make design today that are not designers whatsoever, researchers, journalists,
Gosh, I was at an event last week, and I was chatting to some analyst leaders who work at a big tourist organization in the UK. And they're just rolling out an AI first conversational analytics product. And they were saying, they're feeling their way. So they're letting their users just ask questions and take those insights to decision-making situations.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're finding that having removed the dashboard from the situation, people seem a little bit at sea about what to ask. But then I asked, well, and what happens if they go and make a decision and they've built a chart or a data story, they've constructed a data story that's wrong? I was like, who's responsible? And they were like, we haven't decided that yet.
Yes.
And I've long railed against any kind of governance, because I'm just like a do things quickly kind of guy, but recognizing that is a very bad attitude to have. There is a longer story about the consequences of that, but I won't go into that now. But it's that's a key part of it, right? That if we're not validating our work, those decisions can be wrong, and the system is responsible, right? But where does that responsibility lie? I don't know. Yeah, that's tough. I just was going to bring in the comment. Excellent username, Stealth Coffee Machine. Says like many other uses of AI tools, what you're saying can lead to people not thinking, why am I putting this graph here? And I know that is something you talk about a lot in your outlier talk, right? So how does this aspect of sense making and asking why work in this, or continue to work in this modern paradigm?
Well, it's interesting because it almost reinforced the need for why, not why, just why am I putting this graph? Why am I making this graph? Why this graph? Why this data? Why this messages? Why this text? Right? Like, this is all the why questions. Why do we care? And then, like, what people are supposed to decide out of this, all of those things. I think sense making is three things, and I think sometimes we simplify it. But to us at Figures and Figures, sense making is can I read the thing? Like, is it visually clear? That's level one. Yeah. That's one that still today most people, non-information designers, like most people who produce charts, who may not be information designer, fail at. They're not always visually clear to start with. So that's, can I just read it? That includes accessibility. Can I interpret it is the second layer. So am I able to understand the context around this? Because you can I have a really good client right now, which is in the climate space and trying to make a product that supports community, advocate for themselves and kind of build evidence, allowing them to get evidence to make their case and connect that to the live experience. So for instance, in LA, that might sound like they're on a map and they click and they see like, during a heat wave, the average temperature in Pasadena or my county is 105 degrees Fahrenheit. That number on its own doesn't mean much. I think that reaction you're having is because, for instance, funny enough, I don't have a reaction to that number because I'm French. And so we don't use Fahrenheit. I understand what Fahrenheit are. I have no concept, or very little. After a decade in the US, I have a little bit of a reaction, but I only use Celsius. So for me, 105 Fahrenheit, conceptually, I understand what it is. But I don't really actually understand what it means. And so the sense-making layer is, can I interpret that number? Is 105 actually really high for Pasadena? Or is it normal? Is it high compared to the county next door? Is it high compared to another state? What does it mean, that number? That's another layer. And then finally, I think sense-making for us is also the part where we say, how does that connect to my lived experience? So the consequences of that number, right? 105 is not just really hot and very unpleasant. It also means a higher risk of of elderly dying, for instance, because they don't have AC. Like there's a lot of risk, cardiac arrest, things like that due to the high temperature. And so to me, currently, we don't do any of those things well. Definitely people who are not specialized don't do the first one well. So they don't even do the second and third part. And so imagine an AI that is not specifically, we have just started codifying the visual clarity aspect as a field of like this is somewhat best practice. We haven't codified the why and the how of how to make it interpretable, how to make it connected to lived experience. So there is no framework for AI outside of maybe Alberto Cairo's stolen book. There's very little framework for AI as a whole, but I would argue it's even worse within an enterprise, like a company, to like rely on to actually even like have a framework to use to create things that are of high quality and consider that even as part of the making of the chart.
Hang on, let me dig into that a little bit deeper. So are you saying there's a well-defined framework for sort of the
somewhat,
there's a framework for the sort of the nuts and bolts of why bars work better than pie charts, right? So the actual
a little bit, yeah,
atomic level of building charts, but not the purpose of choosing a bar chart over a pie chart or over some wacky
not the sense making, not text. When is the last time you saw documentation about like how to write? Right, we know. I mean, research shows that the best charts are the one that have the best text. Like that's unfortunately how it works. Like I can pull out the research somewhere. I'm about to write an article about this on LinkedIn, so that'll come out later. But there's research that shows that text is very annotation add meaning, right? Not just the can I read it, but can I understand it? Can I interpret it? And then maybe how does it connect to my life? That's a lot of text. To my knowledge, I have yet to meet a company that have codified that thinking, because guess what? They haven't gotten there. They've gotten to, maybe if you're lucky, they have a style guide, not a guidelines, a style guide, something that puts color, like categorical color, divergent color, here's how to use neutral. It's not even a thinking guideline, it's a styling guideline.
Is the challenge though? All right. Okay. I'm gonna make a statement. I don't know, it might sound controversial, but it's there to be smashed, right? So I would say it's impossible no one would try and write a framework on text, because we have we have the vast scope of what the written word can do and the spoken word, right? So you can be taught how to write well, but the actual use of language is just super flexible. Is data storytelling not the same, and therefore always out of reach for AI?
You would have, that's interesting. You would have to first define data storytelling.
Right. Okay. Well, we've been trying that for about 15 years and not quite got there, have we?
Yeah, I think so. Let's just because I have a hot take on that one, but I'll spare you on this one. But you're right that I don't think it's about, that's the benefit of AI, is it knows how to look for synonym in the word, like a word really fast, right? It's like a super speedy fast dictionary in that sense. It has access to like entire libraries of words and languages. What it doesn't know how to do is how to think about what word to choose. And I don't think that's an impossible task. I think that's possible. Okay. The same way then we train people how to think about what the right chart is for the right data. It takes time. It's more intellectual. It's more thinking. It's less making. But it's teachable. It's trainable to how to think about the thing. And I think that's what AI doesn't do. AI does not think. There's no thinking. There's just executing and then relying on certain framework that pre-exists, which is worse because now you're fighting against knowledge that potentially you disagree with.
Well, that's a great counter to my argument. You've convinced me, Gabby. Thank you. I'm going to jump. Actually, some great questions coming in. So, hi, Annabelle. Annabelle says, what worries me is the fact that with AI, people do less pre-reasoning or use their creativity less. They jump in straight away. What's your opinion on creativity? And are you seeing that? How do we avoid this challenge?
It's interesting. I I'm gonna asterisk the creativity aspect because I think it means visual creativity, but creativity is many things. But I do agree. I think that's the concern that I also have, is that people jump into anything without asking why. It's just faster.
Yes.
So they
Yeah.
don't ask any why. Why are we making this? Why is this important to the company? What are we trying to say? Who's supposed to care about this? Why those people? I agree. And the worst part of that, I think, to me, the most worrisome part of it is that AI creates outputs both in text and now in visual design. If it makes a chart or diagram that feels very authoritative and correct.
Yes.
I mean, it is meant to agree with you on top of that. So it will not automatically by default question you. And so to me, it's kind of a problem because it creates that thing of like visual authority, that makes it look credible. And even actually, we know in research, for instance, like even if you make a chart with AI that looks beautiful, like clean, visually clear, that authority has an effect. It creates credibility, and so it almost like act as like I think the research paper that I was reading about this talks about like it acts as a heuristic that suggests the message is from a professional and credible source. And so yes, the fact that we jump directly makes everything feels like correct from the get-go. So creatively, it can potentially stifle you because you feel like you got the answer already. I'm not convinced, though. I want to say that a creative is always like playing and pushing and exploring. So I think in that case, AI can have a lot of benefits because we as creative tend to ask those why questions. Also in visual choices, like why red, why yellow, why something else.
I love that. I was just bringing something up on the screen here. So I wrote this on Substack last week. So the Claude plugin for PowerPoint basically took an existing chart and rebuilt the chart in PowerPoint, pixel perfect, really powerful. But then I thought, well, okay, I'd given it I'd said, look, here is the data story I want you to build. So build these 3 versions of this slide. So then I said, well, look, here's some made up data about burglaries. Create 2 slides, one telling a positive story and one telling a negative story. Okay, so this is what it came up with. This is nice, right? I mean, this is interesting that it did that. But then I thought, well, I gave it the data and told it to spin the stories. So then I started a new slide and said, just create a data story. And I was really pleased to see that Claude went, well, what do you want me to say? Right? This was great. I think this is really powerful. I went to Gemini, and Gemini took the same data and went, look, it's clearly a high success, right? It's just a successful story. So these, I think this is what we're talking about here, right? So Claude, some product managers, some CEOs who we are unelected, unregulated, and we have no access to, are making decisions. Claude, I think, have made a good decision for humanity here, whereas Gemini is just like, yeah, I'll just make my decision and off we go. And then it made a terrible slide.
Oh,
terrible slide. And Microsoft Copilot could barely even make a coherent slide itself, right? But the point being, those biases, those storytelling decisions, they're being baked in, right? And that's risky.
That's risky, yeah. I think that's risky in so many ways, right? Like you have I think you have the thing we were talking about like the credibility aspect, like the visual authority that comes with it. You have an illusion of precision potentially because I've seen it made when you have. Don't get me wrong, those happens even in everyday chart making. Like those people make those mistakes, but the friction that the software adds to make it sometimes slows them down. Here it just comes out in 3 seconds. So you have. You have all of those illusion of precision. You have an automation bias because like if you really have a time pressure, a low context, which happens a lot when we try to do sense making, the charts become like a verdict and we see it. You're asking him like make a story and it just gives you the verdict that the machine interprets for you, which might be widely accurate because you didn't give it any context, so it pulls whatever context it has accessible. And then to me, I think the larger risk of that is because of the speed of it, it's the scale of error. Like, not just on the data, but on the interpretation, on the 3 layers. On the data itself, there's just simplistic mistake that they make because it's a probabilistic software, so it makes mistake on how to create the thing just by giving it the right data, and it makes a chart, you're like, that doesn't match. So there's just straight up like a data problem, but also like all the messaging, the narrative, all of that, and you scale that, you multiply it by many people creating really fast thing trash. and then I think for organization, it's a huge risk.
That's it. I think that the key of that's a great answer. The keyword or a keyword of that was friction. I think that, just in terms of creativity, how many times are you more successful with a creative endeavor when you go for a walk and then get a piece of paper and a pen and just write down what you're trying to think, right? That is so much more creative because there's friction there, and there's friction of getting ink onto a piece of paper or graphite onto a piece of paper that makes you think. So, I've not really thought of it from that perspective. I think that's amazing, and that illusion of precision is great too. So Rudy said, I think something similar. And again, one of the reasons things don't work is we rely on AI to overlook the importance of creativity and user experience. I think that's right. I think it goes back to diving in too quickly, right? Which AI can encourage you to do.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know if it's overlooking creativity per se, because I don't think that's the problem. I think it's overlooking the thinking behind making charts and promoting just the output. Just make the thing.
Yeah. And on top of that, Rachel says, does AI take in your own bias to create a chart and reinforces it versus pushing back? I mean, you alluded to it there. The LLMs are tuned to be somewhat sycophantic, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you're reading, so that is getting. I mean, there are legal cases. People are committing suicide after being or becoming too obsessed with their LLMs, and is that the fault of the LLM or not? That's the most extreme example of these cases. But you're right, and Rachel, I've set up skills in Gemini, in Claude, to say, look, now I want you to be my critic. Don't just be mean to me. Roast everything I'm doing. It's quite hard when the LLM does that. But you
should be this way. I think it should be this way. I think that, to me, could be a great value of AI, is you feed in framework of like how the type of question that should have been asked, the process that should go through, the codify everything. And then you create something that doesn't give you answer, but that just always is a skeptic and be like, did you really do this thing? Is this really the right message? Did you miss this thing? That's how we use it mainly at Figures and Figures. We don't use it for chart production, obviously. We use it more like when we think about messaging, being like, did we miss something? Is there an additional worldview from the audience that we completely ignored that might prevent them from being able to accept this message? It's way more interesting to have it as a skeptic and as a checker and as something that adds friction than something that speeds the work.
I had a slide line of mindful friction. This was from projects by If. Was that right? This was
that's correct. They call If.
Who are If? I wasn't familiar with them.
If is how would you call them? I will have to look them up, but they are specialized in, from the get-go, in user experience, but mainly around the cushion of it, I guess. The very much the consequence of it. I will have to go look them up to give you the exact. They call themselves unlock the potential of product and services that are enabled by data for the world's most important organization, which is a very generic thing. But really, they're about making trustworthy experiences, I think, is what they do. They're what they specialize in. And I remember watching, I love their work. Before AI, they always were dark patterns in UX. How do you create trust with a user? And how do you not exploit that trust? Because I think people by default may trust you, but how do you earn trust and not just by default have it and then break it? and they had a conference or talk, I believe, and the whole thing, I think they said something about how friction enable user control and agency in AI system, and it increases user trust. And we live in this world where I think most products are meant to be frictionless and seamless, right? Like a seamless experience. You click on thing, it shows up, and they were promoting a different point of view where actually you should add stops, like you had, Andy, when the thing said, but what point of view do you want? Which, not warning you what the consequences of that would be, but at least it kind of stopped you in your track, and it said, but like positive, negative, neutral, like, because you didn't give me no context. And so I think that like human in the loop and the permanent like checking is what makes it really good. And I think in data, that's what's the most important, probably, is those like moment when it stops you and it says, did you check that the thing I made, if you're making it with, which I don't recommend, is correct data wise?
Interesting. Yeah, no, Stealth Coffee Machine, still a great username. Yeah, it is also made a comment there about the context of the data. I think that's incredibly important.
It doesn't have it, the context. You don't give it to him.
No.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple more questions to go, and I'm just interested in your experience now of figures and how are you seeing any difference in the way clients are approaching you? Do you think, and in a more positive, this could be a positive change, like is someone like you, and I guess it's fair to say you're a boutique studio, maybe that's cheesy,
that's fair,
but anyway,
that's fair.
Anyway, but is it working in your favor because people see you as fully human in the loop and therefore have more trust? So that was a simple question that became convoluted. I apologize.
Tough to say if they're craving more human inclusion. I don't think that's what they're craving. I think for us, they reach out because they realize that they have not codified anything when it comes to chart. Specifically, we are contacted by people that we call champions, which are usually people who understand that data is important and is a responsibility and not just a specialty craft. And so they get requests from like very high level of leadership of like pushing AI down their throat. And they're like, whoa, but like, we don't know how to check for it. We don't have a system. Not just visual system, but we don't have a system on how to think about sense making. And so they reach out to us to codify those, to like, because the problem that they have usually is that they already have teams struggling to do it, like the human people. And then they're like, there is no way I'm scaling that. Like the mistake I'm seeing from my team when they make chart, when they try to do sense making, and the gaps that exist in knowledge, those will be multiplied like insane amount, and they feel a responsibility to not multiply those errors because they carry the weight of like the representation of the organization. Like if the evidence presented by the company is wrong, that has huge consequences on them.
I think one of the things from your outlier talk, which we've wrote about in dashboards that deliver as well, and I've talked about, is that if somebody wants a tool to get to what you're trying to talk about, is just keep asking your client why, right? And keep asking why till they're they're bored, right? Because the more you ask, the more you'll get to, oh, actually, that's what you wanted. Is that right?
Yeah, we call it, I think at Alloy, I call it the invisible fire, which is like what keeps them up at night. But it's also, I think it's both. You have to care about what they care about and why. And then also for us, it's about also, they haven't fully realized the consequences sometimes, to be honest. They haven't gone all the way. They might have stopped to we meet a lot of clients that are like, the chart looks like shit, is what we hear. Sorry, I'm not but they're like, yeah, it doesn't look really good. Like we really have a problem with the visual craft aspect of chart making. And we have to do the education of elevate that conversation to, yes, of course, visual clarity, that's an easy solve. But sense making, that's a different problem. And so often, a first step in the process for us when we do this kind of work is to audit the charts charts in the latest 6 months or a year, like hundreds of charts, and then also audit the people making the charts. And that's often when you realize that like when you give that back to them, it's not about you use the wrong color. It's about, okay, visual clarity, problem, sure, like easy to cover, will be covered by style guide templates, color palette. But here's the trust aspect. Here's the one that caused a trust issue, and you publish that. I had a company that I posted about an outlier that I will not name, but they were manipulating truncated access and all of that in investor decks. So things that I release, like the public company, so SEC filing, and then they have to have a quarterly thing, and they were manipulating the visual to make it look like what it was. And I understand why, right, as a public company. And I was like, do you realize that if you investor realize that, you're gonna be in trouble, not just legally, but like it's a huge break of like that has larger consequence than making you quarterly revenue looks good,
Yeah. You know what I mean? God, that's amazing. Going and auditing the charts and auditing the process. So not so much auditing the people. No, you're not judging the people, but you're judging the process.
There's no judgment. Yeah, it's about the process.
And what's so interesting there is we've seen so many layoffs across the industry. My old company, Salesforce and Tableau, they're just hemorrhaging people because AI is making them more productive. But you're just like, it's bullshit, right? Because if you went and audited the people, audited the process, and audited the charts, you're like, well, what have you done? You've not got those in place. You've got rid of the people that could have done those things, and you've replaced it by an AI that knows jack shit about what your organization is doing. It's like, it's such a ridiculous decision. So
no. I mean, it's a ridiculous, but I really think, to be honest, and I'm going to put a little bit of responsibility back on us, is that we got to stop introducing ourselves as shot maker. I'm sorry, but like, if you are just, yes, we are the guardians, we are the stewards of this work, and not because we're the gatekeepers of knowledge and like the only one own it, but like, quite the opposite. Like, we should be educators. We should be so embedded in a strategy and flagging those risks that like I think there's a misunderstanding of like, well, they should know that we're important. Nobody else can do so. No, they don't. How do they know? They don't. They only see the output. And if the output can be sped up by a machine, then why would they care if they don't understand the process? So our responsibility is to walk them through that process of sense making of why matter, what are the nuances, what are the consequences, what does that mean breaking trust, and so that they understand the responsibility that carries, that cannot be, handed off to a untrained AI machine.
Yeah, indeed. Brilliant. I think we've got an agreement here. I think from the comments. So I think people are agreeing with us, which is good. I guess we don't have any tech CEOs in the audience today, but if there are any tech CEOs in the audience, I'd love to know your comments too. Tell me why you laid those people off. But we'll
find a good excuse to do so, in my opinion, probably too. I have to say, I will. They're all like, it's because of AI. The reality is they were bloated and had to get rid of people. Different type of problem.
Indeed, brilliant. Right, well, look, I think that is probably a good way to finish. We are the guardians. This is another screenshot from Gabby's talk Outlier, if you want to go and check that out. So, look, I'm sure people have more questions. Please leave more comments on LinkedIn and YouTube, and we'll get to those. Gabby, where can people find more about you and follow you?
Oh, well, that little link on the screen, figuresofigure.design, or you can look up my full name. I am probably most active on LinkedIn these days. So if you want to be spam every day with all my rant about database, you can come follow me there and follow the studio to see all the beautiful work that our team works really hard at.
All right. Well, that's absolutely amazing. So with that, look, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for the really good comments. We will be back with another episode of the AI Analyst, probably talking about how to use AI to teach data viz, but I've got to fix that guest down. Gabby, this has been absolutely amazing. Friction, trust, it's a responsibility. There's so many great lessons from that. So I just want to say thank you very much, and
thank you,
look forward to what you're doing next.
Yeah.
And bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.